Fellow Kenyans, the BBI proposes amendments to our Constitution to give Kenyans hope for a better nation. It seeks to align the spirit of our nation with the letter of our Constitution, so that obedience to the Constitution is driven by hope and not fear. BBI intends to complete what was started when we adopted the 2010 Constitution and promised to change it later. In fact, the BBI is the driver of the first amendment to the 2010 Constitution. And BBI is not a one-size-fits-all that promises to settle all the constitutional questions through a singular amendment. It is the start of a continuous process of constitution making for our young nation. Even our founding fathers had to freeze certain thorny issues at independence in the hope that subsequent constitution-making processes would resolve them. Their logic then and my rationale today is a constitution is a living document and it cannot be rigid. And to build our nationhood, we must embrace the ideal of a continuous process of constitution making. BBI will not resolve all our constitutional grievances of the day. It is just the first. It only attempts to make the 2010 Constitution better. And as we improve in it, we must remember that going into the future there will be a second amendment and a third, and many more as our young nation grows. So we must therefore be guided by the spirit of the First Amendment to the 2010 Constitution as we deliberate the BBI proposals. It is a discerning spirit that seeks to align our national aspirations with the letter of our Constitution. And to be discerning, the spirit of the First Amendment has to be a questioning one. The spirit of the First Amendment is also a spirit of inclusion, co-creation, and justice. On the spirit of inclusion, it does not augur well when at the top you have only two individuals in the form of the President and the Deputy President. More so in an ethnically diverse nation as ours. This creates an environment of political exclusion, resulting in the cyclical violence that we have witnessed in every election. We can increase these positions in order to make the leadership of the country that much more inclusive. This, by the way, was the Kofi Annan consensus of February 2008 that gave us peace. And if it worked then, it means there was something right about it. And yes, 5 positions at the apex of the executive means that some people will be left out. And that is why BBI proposes to introduce the position of leader of the official opposition that was successful under former constitutional dispensations. If the opposition carries a large portion of the country and the winner in an election carries another, isn't there therefore a compelling argument? And is it not in the national interest to give official recognition to the opposition and support his office in the form of a shadow cabinet? An expanded executive and constitutional recognition of the opposition will reduce the notion of political scarcity and the propensity for election violence every 5 years. Similarly, it will enhance the doctrine of a constitution of hope over a constitution of fear. The spirit of the First Amendment is also a spirit of co-creation, and this is demonstrated by the system of devolution I talked about earlier, which is one of the brilliant designs of the 2010 Constitution. The devolved system was engineered by the framers of our Constitution to be a system where the national government co-creates solutions with county governments. And the fight against COVID-19 has demonstrated the power of this partnership. The First Amendment therefore proposes to strengthen this model of co-creation by doing 3 things. 1, increasing funding allocated to counties by the national government from 15% to 35%. More money to the counties means more money to the people. 2, creating a ward fund. And the intention here is to take development as close to the people as we can. But the third element of co-creation is probably the most compelling. We cannot co-create the devolved system if it is just dominated by men. Devolution without women is like a seedless field where nothing grows. And that is why the First Amendment proposes a 50-50 sharing of Senate by men and women. If 50% of Senate will be made up of women, their contribution to a robust devolved system will be felt. And this means that they will control half of the Senate decisions, including how the upscale 35% of national resources sent to the counties will be spent. And that is why we must ask the following question. Who loses if women control 50% of the Senate, its resources and its decisions? Is strengthening devolution through a 50-50 co-creation formula between men and women good for the country? I believe so. And does this formula support a constitution of fear, or does it create a constitution of hope? The spirit, therefore, of this First Amendment is also a spirit of justice. And by this I mean justice in representation and justice under the law. Justice in representation is also about inclusion. Every Kenyan must have a just and fair avenue for participation in the actions of his or her government. This is not a luxury. It is at the core of our democratic ethos. And that is why the First Amendment proposes to align in our representation model to ensure that everyone is accommodated justly